Tilea's Troubles, Part 16. Miracolo a Viadazza. The city of Viadazza, northwest Tilea, autumn 2401. Gonzalvo seemed hurt that Biagino might doubt him. "She has come," he insisted. "I tell you, brother, it was her. I had to push through the crowd, cheering her arrival, and they cried out her name." "But there have been many refugees, noble and common," countered Biagino. "Are you sure it was not simply a lady affecting Abenan fashions?" The two clerics were sat at the large table in the upper lodging of the Garlasco temple. Biagino was clad in his usual grey woolen habit, his carmine cowl adding the contrast favoured by priests of the Church of Moor. Gonzalvo, on the other hand, had taken to wearing a scarlet cap, the better to be seen by, and a linen jack containing iron plates, so as to appear more military. "I saw her face," said Gonzalvo, "only briefly, as she had already passed by, but she did turn to look behind, just long enough for me to know it was her. Besides, when they cried out her name, she raised her hand to acknowledge them." Biagino still found it hard to believe. "Did she arrive alone? Was she injured? Was she mounted?" he asked, stopping only to give Gonzalvo time to answer, not because of a shortage of other questions. Gonzalvo frowned, then spoke. "She rode upon a fierce-looking mount, a fighting horse without doubt, and though her skirts were spattered with mud, her hair undressed, she looked well enough, I think, if her posture is anything to go by. She had two servants with her, one carrying a shield and mounted well, the other in ragged robes, riding a nag." "That is all that remains of her army?" asked Biagino. "Perhaps," said Gonzalvo uncertainly. "I doubt they were palazzo guards, nor officers by the look of them. They were sallow of complexion, weather-beaten, hard-looking fellows. One turned when the Duchess did, and he had the cold, cruel eyes of someone who's seen too many battles. Maybe they were the last survivors of a company, the rest dying to keep the Duchess safe. Maybe they were among the few who escaped Urbino." "Where is she now?" asked Biagino. "She was met by some of Lord Adolfo's courtiers, and escorted to the palace, and they had a company of brutes with them who cleared a way through the crowd." Biagino had to admit this all sounded convincing. The Duchess Maria had been missing for nigh upon 2 months, and in the second month it had become generally presumed she must have been killed or captured after her flight from the battle outside her city of Urbino. Now it seemed that those few who had claimed she was hiding, waiting until it was safe to continue her journey, had been right. Sadly, her enforced delay meant that it was far too late to gather a relief force to save her city. Urbino had fallen to the undead weeks ago. Momentarily distracted by his thoughts, Biagino suddenly noticed Gonzalvo watching him intently. "So," said Gonzalvo, "now she is here. Will she lead our crusade?" "Lead the crusade?" questioned Biagino. "With her at our head, surely even those uninspired by a faith in Moor will join us," said Gonzalvo. "She's the rightful ruler of Urbino, and by inheritance perhaps of Miragliano. When victorious, she could reward all those who helped her recover her realm. Mercenaries like to know they will be paid in gold and silver in the here and now, rather than with Moor's love and favour in the hereafter." "I'm not sure she is a general, nor even a soldier," Biagino answered. "But she is noble. She might not lead us in battle, but in other ways, perhaps yes. At the least, and it would be no little thing, she might be persuaded to assist our raising of an army. The peasants, labourers and seamen we have now are keen enough, but they're neither well armed nor skilled in war. If our army is to win victories, it needs seasoning with real fighters. But best not get ahead of ourselves." Gonzalvo frowned. "Brother Biagino, we must act quickly. The enemy will only grow stronger with time." Oh, we must indeed act as quickly as possible. What I meant is, we cannot appear to be commanding her, nor rushing her. No, rather we should humbly seek an audience with her and politely present our case. She has fought her blood and ruled her own city. She must not think we are making demands or are attempting to command her. We must offer ourselves to her as allies and servants, giving her hope, while explaining that we need her help, and we must do all in such a way as not to make our cause appear weak. That, brother, seems entirely possible, said Gonzalvo, through a weak smile. We can say we've already begun the work of raising an army, but that she might aid us to speed the process, ensuring that the army is ready soon enough to prevent the wicked vampire duke from taking too many more lives. That sort of thing, yes, said Biagino, but treading gently throughout. The next day. The two of them had returned in silence. Everyone on the streets had made way for them, either because they knew them and respected them, or because they could see they were priests of Moor and in a foul mood. Once back at their temple lodgings, they threw themselves into the high-backed chairs. Both knew they must talk, despite how difficult the words would be. Finally, it was Biagino who broke the silence. "Does she think our cause is not just? Does she not believe that we are inspired by Moor? I could have unleashed his wrath in that very chamber." Gonzalvo had never seen his brother priest so angry. "You could have, and thankfully did not," he said. "They might all have thought us no better than practitioners of dark magic." "They had no respect for us anyway," spat Biagino. "Lord Adolfo looked at us with barely concealed contempt, as if we were mere rabble-rousers. Surprised he didn't have us arrested there and then." Gonzalvo nodded. "We have the Duchess to thank for that." "Aye, maybe so, but for nothing else," said Biagino. This was what most vexed Biagino, that the Duchess should offer them so little support. He had expected nothing better from Lord Adolfo, who was his father's son. From the start of Gonzalvo and Biagino's preaching in Viadazza, throughout the growth of the military Moorite movement and the birth of the army, Lord Adolfo had offered no support at all. Indeed, he had only just stopped short of putting them down. His militia had dispersed several of the spontaneous gatherings, those unsanctioned by the Church of Moor. His marines had been implicated in the killing of no less than 4 peasant crusaders. Lord Adolfo had 2 marines hanged for the crime, but it was generally held that this was a mere token punishment to satisfy the priests, and that the particular men executed were chosen because of Adolfo's dislike of them rather than any proven guilt. Biagino and Gonzalvo had been escorted by 2 wordless men-at-arms bearing great swords upon their shoulders, and brought before the Duchess Maria and Lord Adolfo in the Palazzo's great hall, as if they were prisoners to be questioned or begging supplicants reluctantly granted an audience. The Palazzo was one of the few buildings in Viadazza to be constructed in the southern fashion. The nobles had been sat at a large table upon the dais at the eastern end of the hall, and looked down upon the priests in more ways than one. Although the Duchess treated the 2 priests better, hers had been a cold civility. She addressed them correctly, listened politely, but otherwise offered them the bare minimum of respect required, as if listening to them was simply a duty of her office. At first, Biagino had thought it was due to a distracted state of mind, bored of her dreadful loss and the trials and tribulations of her flight. As time went by, however, he changed his mind. Her haughty manner, her aloofness were deep-rooted, not merely an affectation to hide a traumatized soul. And beyond all that, there was something else which Biagino could not put his finger on. The Duchess seemed, to him, to be hiding something dreadful. "Perhaps it would have gone better if we'd spoken to her before Lord Adolfo and his cronies could do so," suggested Gonzalvo. "I think he must have painted a sorry picture of our crusade. He might not have been bold enough to slander Moor in her presence, but he could have belittled our army as nothing more than a mob. It has been reported that he said as much in public, and on more than one occasion." "That much is certain," agreed Biagino. "She might want to fight, just not by our side." "She did say we could fight under the standard of Miragliano." No, you misremember," said Biagino. "We said we could fight under the standard of Miragliano, in her service, and she granted us that wish. Nothing more. Just take the standard and go. I have more important duties elsewhere." "Not in those words," countered Gonzalvo. No, she put it more politely, and she was politic throughout, but I think that was her meaning. We would go and begin our petty crusade, and then she would bring a real army to complete the work. They fell silent again. After a while, Gonzalvo, in a somewhat dejected tone, asked, "So, what do we do now?" He sounded nothing like the firebrand priest who had delivered a string of stirring sermons to the crowds. "We begin our crusade," answered Biagino. "As more wishes and Tilea needs. We make our army as fit for war as we can make it. If she brings an army, well and good. If not, then we fight that bit harder."